Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Nakia Simmons Cotton, author of Essential Tips for Parents of Students with Disabilities. And I want to give you a preview of chapters 8 and 9. Chapter 8 was a work of heart and art for me because in that chapter, I talk about what happens once a student graduates. What options are there for parents of students with disabilities once they graduate from high school? Because a student graduates, you're still a parent. So you still have to guide and navigate that student and help them be successful in life. Parenting doesn't end at grade 12. So in chapter 8, I talk about that. Chapter 8 is called Leaving the Nest, Transition, College, and Post-Secondary Options. So in that, I talk about your job and your role as a parent and how important that is. I talk about transition services and the transition process for students with disabilities. From there, I talk about college and post-secondary. I talk about school completion, the summary of performance, the transfer of rights that happens once a student becomes 18, just other programs and a plethora of programs and pathways for students with disabilities once they graduate from high school. So I talk about enrollment pathways, education pathways, early college and dual enrollment, um, internships, community-based work, paid enrollment pathways, apprenticeships. So I just give a whole breakdown of what happens and how you prepare your child once they graduate. I introduce vocational rehabilitation. If you're not familiar with that, I talk about vocational rehabilitation programs in state agencies that help assist students with disabilities once they graduate from high school. I also talk about when students enroll in college, if that's a pathway that is chosen for your child, and those common accommodations and how you get those accommodations in college. So, chapter 8 is all about post-secondary outcomes. I talk about advocating, social emotional needs, and just everything that a parent would need to know, where and how to get started with their student with a disability when they graduate from high school. So, chapter 8, when they leave the nest, what happens next? I provide some essential sites, information, and then some recommendations. So, that's chapter 8. Chapter 9, I talk about essential tips and recommendations for parents. So, when you're a parent of a child with a disability, you have to do things to take care of yourself, to provide yourself to be a strong parent, a super parent, because parents of students with disabilities, I titled them as super parents because you've been given a special task. So, in chapter 9, I talk about those tips and recommendations, and it just is just like 12 great tips for parents. And with these tips, you can use them however you want to, just to empower yourself when you're a super parent, just to kind of remind you of those things and what really matters when you're supporting your child, because parents of students with disabilities are super parents. And for me, I'm one myself because I have a child with a disability. So it takes one to know one. So chapters 8 and 9, Essential Tips for Parents, available on Amazon. Follow the link and happy reading.